Let's Talk with Keith Spera is underwritten by the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Foundation.
Hello, I'm Keith Spera from NOLA.com and the Times-Picayune. Welcome to Let's Talk. In the early 1970s, singer-songwriter Jim Croce scored a string of hits including Bad Bad Leroy Brown, Operator, and I Got a Name. He died in a plane crash in northwest Louisiana in 1973, leaving behind a toddler son named AJ. AJ would grow up to be a songwriter himself and a piano player heavily influenced by the New Orleans piano tradition. On his current tour, dubbed Croce Plays Croce, AJ is performing his songs alongside those of his father. The tour stops at the Joy Theater on March 24th. Here to talk about all that and more is AJ Croce. AJ, welcome to Let's Talk, sir.
Hey, thanks for having me, Keith.
So on this tour, you're playing your father's songs, but I noticed you did not attempt to replicate his rather amazing mustache.
Well, so few of us dress like our fathers, you know. Even if we follow in their footsteps, we usually don't wear the same shoes. You know, it's just one of those things. I think, you know, this show is a long time coming. I didn't start doing this. You know, I started with the influence of, you know, blues and R&B and jazz and rock and roll and I mean, B.B. King was the person that discovered me when I was 18. So it was going from that world. It didn't seem like there was a lot of integrity in just playing my dad's stuff. But having worked behind the scenes for nearly 30 years with his catalog and his songs and making sure that it's preserved and that his legacy is respected and that people are aware of it. I thought this was something that came in a really organic way. It was it went from you know, being a young guy saying I'm never going to do that to being in my 50s and recognizing that it's a really amazing thing to find this connection and it's been a lot of fun.
But you draw the line at the mustache. No mustache.
We'll see. I could grow one about once a day, so we'll see what happens by the time I get to the Joy Theater.
Well, yeah, and obviously, I mean, there are a lot of issues at play, but I think, you know, growing up, it's natural for a teenager to sort of reject is too strong a word, but not want to embrace his dad's stuff or his parents' music.
Rebel.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
You know, I mean, look, I grew up, you know, my dad listened to all that stuff, Fats Domino and Irma Thomas and Professor Longhair, you know, and I dismissed all that as like old man's music. Of course, when I grew up, I'm like, no, that's some of the hippest stuff ever recorded. So for you, I imagine there was a little bit of that.
It's very similar.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely, Keith. You know, because my dad's record collection was amazing. And that's where I got turned on to Mississippi John Hurt, Fats Waller, Bessie Smith, and all the old, you know, Delta blues and country blues stuff, as well as jazz and you know, Fats Domino, Little Richard, Ray Charles was my, you know, gateway drug. I was like completely obsessed with that. You know, probably for a few different reasons. It became really important to me. So it was through his collection in a lot of ways that I came around to performing his music, recognizing we had more in common in a way than I had really thought.
Wasn't there a story about you finding a tape that he had made, like a homemade tape of him playing some of these old, like, Mississippi John Hurt songs or something like that?
Yeah. There were a lot of those tapes before he ever, you know, his career was about 18 months of being able to play professionally, the last 18 months of his life. And before then, on the weekends, he would play, get wherever he could, play in a bar or in a coffee shop or whatever. And I think he always paid a lot of attention to where he was going to be playing, who the audience was, and wanted to entertain them. So he would really sort of choose the selections of the evening based on the kind of audience it was going to be. It might lean more country or more, old blues, or, might be Sam Cooke songs. So he was, his record collection was a good example of how eclectic he was as a performer and his influences. And so, it was one particular recording from the late 60s. He was getting ready to play a place on a Saturday evening and had recorded all these really obscure songs by pretty obscure artists. Mm-hmm. Unless you're like a real music fan, you might not know Pink Anderson, or you might not know these particular recordings that were like deep cuts by Fats Waller, like You're Not the Only Oyster in the Stew, and really obscure stuff by Bessie Smith and Mississippi John Hurt and Sonny Terry and Brownie McGhee, and on and on and on. And every song on this tape was something that I had performed on piano, mind you, from the time I was 13 or 14. And it was amazing. That was like the first moment where I realized we had a connection. These things most of them weren't in his record collection. They were in my record collection because I expanded upon what was there, but it was really unique and special, and it gave me a connection to him that I never thought I would have.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're just tuning in, my guest today is A.J. Croce, who is on tour right now playing his songs and the songs of his father, Jim Croce. When you first made the decision to start playing his songs in this tour, did you take to them naturally? I mean, you had, because you weren't a guitar player, and his main instrument was guitar, so you had to learn guitar, yeah. I guess, right, to play them.
Well, I picked up guitar started about 20 years ago, mm-hmm. And it worked out well because it was just in time to be able to play well enough to do these songs on this tour. Some of this stuff, well, on piano, it's not ever been like the challenge to play these things. On guitar, it's another thing altogether. It's really hard. There's a million chords in every song, and there's a lot of unique things about the structure of them. So yes, picking up guitar was really helpful in making this thing happen. But it came about. It really started. The recording I told you about was a big step. The next thing was about 11 years ago was what would have been his 70th birthday. So I got a bunch of friends together that were singers and whatnot. I played a concert, and we performed his stuff, and I thought, this is really fun. Saw the reaction in a small club, and it was really just for the love of it. Yeah. And the reaction from the people was so sweet and so amazing. After that, every once in a while I would throw in a song of his, throw in Operator, or throw in Box Number 10 or Lover's Cross, or maybe a deeper cut that people may not be as familiar with, and it just sort of came about. And around 2019, I decided to put this show together. But initially, Croce Plays Croce, the idea was that it was, a tribute to his music, and the music that I've composed, and the music that is really influenced both of us, yeah. And the stories that connect all of them. The stories are really important. He was a storyteller in many ways, more so than just in his songwriting. And it was really important to me that this show have a through line and have a sort of an interesting way that could be improvised every night, because I came up through playing, music that was improvised. Improvisational music was critical to what I loved to do. And performing a show, the idea of having to play the same set every night drove me crazy. Now, I have a beginning, a middle, and an end. We're going to play all the hits. We'll do Time in a Bottle and Operator and Don't Mess Around with Jim and Leroy Brown and all of the
Sure.
I Got a Name and all the stuff that people want to hear for sure. Have to Say I Love You in a Song. All of these things, I promise we'll do it, but it is hugely dependent upon the audience to tell us what they want to hear, because about halfway through the show, I open up, the request lines, and everyone is free to shout out what they came to hear, and it's so much fun. It allows the band and I to really go off on tangents, and so we do it every night. Now we've had folks come 3 or 4 times to this particular show, this 50th anniversary show, because every night's different and they don't know really what we're going to do. And so I think that makes it fun for the audience.
Absolutely. If you're just tuning in, my guest today is AJ Croce, who is on tour right now playing his songs and the songs of his late father, Jim Croce. And it's interesting, going back to sort of your initial reluctance to play the music, in a sense, his catalog is sort of the family business, and people in other businesses hand down their businesses to their children. So, you are the natural inheritor of this catalog of songs in a way.
Yes, it took in a very roundabout way. It didn't come directly to me, and there was no, my father was not a businessman. he made very bad choices, which still, haunt the catalog to this day. That being said, he, even though that was the case, after having worked my own catalog for 10 years, his catalog reverted. And so I was in really good shape to be able to do, and had the experience, both the life experience as well as the experience as a publisher, to be able to work his catalog, and
meaning it reverted, meaning the rights, you guys got the rights back.
The rights reverted, yeah. And it was, it was sort of a surprise, because all of it had been held by so many different people over the years that the fact that I had any piece of it, even though it's a small piece, and the ability to say yes or no to things was, to a lot of things, not everything, was really wonderful for a change, and
were you,
but that's another story altogether.
Well, as I say, so were you involved with the reissues that just came out a little while ago, the definitive Croce, the 3-album set that came out on LP?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was trying to get those albums released for 25 years. They were just reluctant, because they didn't have to. They could put out, there were 385 different collections of his in the U.S. alone, and even more than that internationally. So and you're working with 35 songs, so it was overwhelming, and the market was crazy with that stuff, and people that had all of this. I mean, it's amazing that the music is still so relevant, that so many people love it, and how often it gets used in really unique spaces on film and television, and it's and it takes that's it's part of my week.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not my main job. My main job is performing and playing and making music and recording. But it certainly has at times taken over my life.
But there are worse things that have take over your life than this amazing catalog of songs that people love.
It's always music. It's always music. Yeah.
And it's interesting too. I mean, a lot of times when someone loses a parent so young, I mean, you weren't even 2 when your father passed, you learn about them through, the surviving parent and friends and what have you. But you've also, I guess, learned about him through this public persona that he had and the catalog of songs. So that had to be interesting for you, because you didn't really know him as a present parent in a sense, but he exists in the larger world as this other character. So I guess you had to kind of sort out.
What's interesting, absolutely. It was, the fame factor of it is always I think you can ask anyone who has lived with a modicum of fame or vicariously through someone else, that it is a very bizarre thing, and especially when someone has affected a lot of people around the world, millions and millions of people. That being said, I always felt he was present in a way because the music was there. Mm-hmm. There were all of these home recordings. There was a sense, a piece of him was a piece of me, and the people that were close to him were, many of them were in my life growing up. So it was, it felt right, just he seemed like he was there in a way, even though he wasn't,
Right.
But I think in that way it was very unique. Most people don't have that presence of a parent who's gone.
Right, absolutely. What was your sort of, you talked about a gateway drug earlier, I think Ray Charles you mentioned. What was your New Orleans piano gateway drug? What kind of drew you to that whole, the New Orleans piano tradition?
Yeah, so there was a few things that drew me to it. When I was really young, my mother used to sing me Lee Dorsey song that was written by Alan Toussaint, working in a coal mine, and other Toussaint songs. And my folks used to sing a couple different Toussaint songs when they performed together as a duo. So that was one thing. And then when I was 13, I saw, of course, Little Richard and Fats Domino, that was part of the collection. So I loved that music. And having lost my sight when I was very young, I was 4, I started playing piano by ear, and that music just drew me to the instrument. And so playing Fats Domino stuff since I was a little kid, it felt like second nature. But it was really a Jim Jarmusch film, Stranger Than Paradise, I think, that turned me on to Irma Thomas, and I think a lot of people on to Irma Thomas. And curiously, it was through that that I really began to research and sort of study Alan Toussaint, because I loved his songs, I loved his playing, I loved his harmonies, the way he arranged the horn section, the way he arranged the band. And while he had a number of different great arrangers that worked with him at different times, he was so good. Yeah. And so that was the connection. I've of course loved Huey Piano Smith, and I loved James Booker, and I loved all of that, long hair, and then after my first album came out, I was about 19, I think, 19 or 20 when it came out, and someone said, "Oh, it reminds me of Dr. John." And I knew right place, wrong time, and such a night. But I didn't really know Dr. John. I didn't know how his whole catalog or anything, or how great especially those early records were.
Yeah.
Again, produced by Alan Toussaint, and so I went to see him perform, and was just blown away, and went backstage. And the first person I meet is David Garrard, who's his bass player, played with him for almost 40 years, right. And who is now has been with me for almost a decade. So and coincidentally, we were reintroduced by Alan Toussaint, who I got to work with and perform with, and who produced a couple of my songs. So it's a crazy world. It's a full circle connection. But the Neville Brothers were another thing that the Chapatulas and all of that music that I loved, and meters and stuff. But I was on tour opening for the Nevilles a lot, and Aaron, on a number of occasions, as well as Cyril and Art would invite me to come and sing or sit in, play on a song or something. We probably did 65, 70 shows all around the world together. In fact, I was just thinking of a show. We weren't even on the same bill, but we were traveling together in Norway, and and we we landed, and we're getting off the plane in this tiny little town in Norway, and there's two Cadillacs, vintage Cadillacs. One's a 56, and they've got the king's flag on them, the King Olaf of Norway. And there's a 56 and a 73, and Art looks out the window as we're about to get off the plane. He said, "I'm taking the 56." So the Neville's all took the 56, and my band took the 73. It was something very, very surreal.
Art claimed the 56. Art Neville claimed it. He claimed the 56.
Yeah.
That's good.
He claimed it. Yeah. He claimed it. Anyway, so there was, all of that connection, and my late wife, her mother-in-law, or her mother lived there for 50 years. So I was there a lot and heard a lot of great music and jammed a lot. And it just always felt like a second home to me, wherever I lived.
Absolutely. If you're just tuning in, my guest today is A.J. Croce, who is on the road playing his songs and the songs of his father, Jim Croce. You mentioned working with Alan Toussaint. He did a couple of songs on your 2014 album, 12 Tales. Actually, talk about a full circle moment. To actually have him producing a couple of your tunes had to be a heck of a thing.
Oh, it was amazing. One of those was a song I had written with Leon Russell, and I so wanted to, because Leon and I had written a bunch together, and I brought it to Alan Toussaint, and I said, "A.T., would you consider producing an album with Leon and I?" I really, really tried to make it happen because I know that Toussaint was a fan of his, and unfortunately it never worked out. But we did get a couple of songs recorded of ours, and one of them was with Alan, and I can tell you, I wanted to perform a bunch of stuff, give him a chance to choose which songs he might want to work on, and that was one of the more terrifying, experiences, just because I was such a huge fan.
Yeah.
And sitting at his house, playing on his piano, and it was just. It was a thrill, and we had played together before then, and I had sat in with him, and we played four-handed boogies and stuff all over, but never really been, at his place playing his piano and all that,
Yeah,
so it was a thrill.
A little thrill and a little intimidating, I would imagine, as well.
Oh my God, yeah, of course. Especially because he was taking notes the whole time. He was writing down both the music and the lyrics. I'd never seen anyone do that before. That was just amazing.
He was Alan Toussaint for a reason. Very meticulous.
Yeah.
Noticed those kind of details. Took care of it. And
oh yeah, debonair.
Debonair, the best dressed man in the room. Best dressed man in the room. Even out at the fairgrounds at Jazz Fest, he'll be, wearing a pair of sandals with socks and makes it look totally cool. He was,
That's right, and a suit, and a purple suit to match the car.
Exactly.
Love it.
All right, so we've only got a couple minutes left here. On this tour, do you play the song "Time in a Bottle"?
I do. As I mentioned, I'll play all of the hits. It's really fun, and the show that's going on behind us, it's a big group with singers and a wonderful band, but behind us too, the videos and the video collages and everything that's going on behind us is so much fun to watch for the audience. And we've got 8 cameras on stage as well, so it's just like this kind of multimedia collage that's going on while you're listening to live music.
And is that the song?
I think you'll dig it.
No, it sounds great. And that's a song he wrote for you, right? Or right after you were born, or when he found out he was going to be a dad? Is that the one?
Yeah, that's right.
Wow.
Absolutely.
Wow. Yeah, and what are the lines in it? I mean, it's about never seemed to be enough time to do the things you want to do. I mean, man, that's got to be a little bit of a poignant song for you to play at this point in the show, huh?
It is. I mean, I think it was prophetic then for him, and it always has been in a way for me. I think it was always very personal, and it was probably the hardest song to tackle as a performer because it was so personal. and it was emotional. And when I perform it, you can see the way that the audience reacts, because it's really emotional. I mean, the audiences on this tour, not only have they come back every, multiple times, but also you see 3 generations, laughing and crying throughout the show. It's very emotional, and a lot of high energy stuff, because I think people think maybe it's all time in a bottle and slower songs, but actually the tempo of the whole show is really very much alive, and I think that's what people come back for.
All right. Well, you going to keep doing the show for a little while then, you think?
Well, I've got this leg of the tour, and then we're going to finish up this 50th anniversary tour out west, starting in the fall. So I'll be doing it until then. That's for sure.
No, it's again, it's an incredible legacy to celebrate and to show the sort of continuation. Excuse me, from what he did to what you did now, and blend it all together, just makes a lot of sense. And I'm glad you're at a point in your life where you're cool with doing that. It just makes a lot of sense, I think.
I love it, and I think it comes across. And I think, honestly, too, after having done this, I can't really imagine performing one of my own shows without touching on a couple of his songs, because it's been so much fun, and just feel the audience when I start one of these tunes that's so iconic. I just feel the love and the energy and emotion from them, and you can't do better than that.
No, you can't. Well, AJ, I appreciate you joining me today. This has been really great, and I wish you the best of luck with the rest of the tour.
Thank you so much. Take care.
All right. Once again, that was AJ Croce joining me today on Let's Talk. We'll talk again next week.
Let's Talk with Keith Spera is underwritten by the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Foundation.